Journey to Rome. The day came when Paul was set to sail to Rome. This was his last journey. It wasn't one that was planned as such, although the apostle always wanted to go to Rome and work on spreading the gospel there too. Even more, his intentions were to reach even further to Spain, but those plans and desires were never fulfilled. So, how did Paul's trip go about? Let's dive into some of those moments in this week's lesson.
We are at the end of the study of the book of Acts. We are looking at the last 2 chapters, and maybe you expect to see how this whole drama finally resolves. How did Paul's trial and his presentation in front of Caesar go? But the point to get is that it's not about that. The book of Acts is an unfinished story. We're writing pages in it today as well. It's about spreading the gospel and living it. The precious in it are the stories and the encounters with people in all levels and areas of life, under all kinds of circumstances, and the testimonies about the work of God when people notice Him in our lives. So Paul embarks, or is being embarked, on a journey to Rome.
First, let's mention some good-to-know details about the trip. Paul departed on a ship from Caesarea. He wasn't alone. 2 men accompanied him and attended to his needs. One was Luke, the writer of the book, and Aristarchus from Macedonia. Also, it was the end of the summer, more precisely just after the fast for the Day of the Atonement, which was the second half of the month of October. In other words, you don't start your sea journey at that time of the year. It was considered that between November and March was a no-no season for travel. They were about to sail off in just the last window of opportunity. Their plan was to leave and winter somewhere on the way.
Reading through all the descriptive details about the sailing is really cool. It helps to get into the spirit of the time, to better understand how dependent they were from the weather, how decisions were made, and how people were thinking.
It was right from the beginning that their travel was met with some difficulties because the winds were against us, or because the wind did not allow us to hold our course. They even ended up in a place that was not even on their route. They called it Fair Havens, very close to the town of Lycia. And this is exactly where the apostle gave them the warning that their voyage will be disastrous and bring great loss to the ship and to the cargo, according to verse 10 in chapter 27. Like a voice in the desert. Ignored, they sailed off to Phoenix, where it was planned and intended to winter on. As you can guess, the things did not go well, and they encountered a wind with hurricane force called the northeastern that hit the ship in such a violent way that they start throwing all the cargo over the board, as well as the ship tackle, and they finally gave up all hope to be saved, according to verse 20. The record of Dr. Luke tells us that God was still with Paul. Through a visit of an angel, he reaffirmed him by saying, "You must stand a trial before the Caesar," which in plain Greek and plain English meant nobody will die.
Paul's advice to not engage in the trip at this time wasn't followed, but he still got a good attitude. He still was at his best and engaged in the traveling community. His attitude was noticed and appreciated.
Since from the beginning of the trip, the Roman centurion Julius, who was in charge of bringing Paul to Rome, favored him. And even in one occasion, a couple occasions actually, we read how he listened to Paul's advice and followed up on him. Such was the moment when the ship was just about to be wrecked in a sandbar close to the island of Malta. The sailors, pretending they're dropping down the anchor, they threw out the lifeboats. A word of warning from the apostle to the centurion produced a command to the soldiers to go and cut those ropes of the boats and let them drift away. This is what saved the boat. It clearly shows that Paul was regarded with trust and respect in his wisdom in this whole journey, which even the travelers in the boat appreciated. We don't need to read that he preached to them about Jesus. However, he was part of maintaining of the common well-being in this community. And it was just another way of witnessing about Jesus and his character.
Every small presence of light in darkness is noticeable and makes a difference. When we let the light of Jesus shine wherever we are, it will make a difference. Our world of villains and superheroes doesn't get the Christian view of the struggle between good and evil. But as we can see with Paul in Malta, the real life experiences help break barriers and build understanding.
There is a few more events that we read here and there in the next chapter 27-28 of Paul's traveling to Rome, and we don't have time to mention all of those stories. Stories like the story of the snake bite, or the story of the hospitality of the islanders and the chief official Publius, and how Paul healed his father, and so on and so on. Finally, Paul arrives in Rome. He is embraced by the believers there. He rents a house, and in the next 2 years, according to verse 30, he preaches and proclaims the good news of salvation, the forgiveness of sin, God's love, and the sacrifice that was made for every Jew and Gentile. He persuaded the Jews first, as it was his custom. If they can only open their hearts to the message and to the acceptance of the Gentiles as equally deserving salvation, without requirements, but through faith in Jesus alone. Again, as it has been always, it was a hard battle. The majority of them rejected him, did not believe him, left him. However, the apostle continued with boldness and without hindrance to do what he was commissioned to do.
From the book of Acts, we don't get to know how things developed for Paul from here. From additional sources, we learn that most likely he was liberated from his imprisonment, even though it took a few years. Probably he went to another missionary journey, but ended up imprisoned again in Rome, and this time executed under the repressions by Emperor Nero. The big point, though, is that the gospel broke to the world, and the world will never be the same. Let's keep writing pages, and let God do his miracles as he has always done it. It's a great controversy, though, and there is no way to forget that.
Paul did not get the unity he was looking for, but this is a great topic to study, and next quarter we'll be looking at oneness in Christ.